knowledge, understanding, and insight for men and young men. Now, today I want to talk to y'all about being a king. Who are you? You know, the Bible says that Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But we need to really know who you are, or who we are in the earth. Now, there's 5 types of kings in the earth. Now, some of us don't even know who we are. Some of us are just getting a glimpse of who we are. But there's 5 different types of kings in the earth. Now, if you stay with me, we're going to dive into like 3 of them on this section, because this is going to be called part 1. Then we're going to have a part 2 with 2 others. So just remember, there's 5 types of kings in the earth. Now, number 1 is going to be a sage king. A sage is somebody who has wisdom, has knowledge, has understanding and insight. A priestly king. Then you have a servant king. Then you have an artisan king. Then you have the warrior king. All right, those are the 5 types of kings. Now let's just dig deep off into just what is a king. Who is a king? What are the attributes and characteristics of a king? Now, the characteristics of a king is they're naturally born leaders with the innate sense of power and personal authority. All right, and let's dive into the word king. The word king reflects the fact that a person has the commanding presence. They don't even have to say a word. It's just when they walk into a room, they have a regal air about them. It's not arrogancy, but it's confidence. That's what kings have. All kings have this. Men have this. An innate power and even a regal air about themselves. Kings are born leaders, and others will tend to automatically look to them for leadership and direction. Fathers in your home over your children. Older brothers over the younger siblings. Okay? You get where I'm going? But not just being ultimate decision makers, but also the ones who takes full and ultimate responsibility of an action. Now let's see what there's 2 types of kings. When I say types, we're talking about 5 different types of kings. I don't want to say type. I'm gonna say the positive role of a king and a negative role of a king. That's a better way of saying it. The positive role of a king and a negative role of a king. The positive role of a king is one, in a sense, that has mastery over that realm that they have authority over. Completely autonomous, powerful, and responsible, in charge of both themselves and their surroundings in good nature. They can achieve the ultimate of effects and synergize an action, encouraging others to achieve greatness in themselves. That's the positive role of a king. Now let's look at the negative role of a king. Well, what comes to mind when you think about a negative role of a king? A tyrant. Someone who uses fear and intimidation to rule over people. So the negative role of a king is one of a tyrant. They are also called puppet masters, meaning playing people as pawns to their own selfish gain. They're all about self. The negative role of a king, they're all about self. Self-centered, self-seeking. You know, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can think about so many people. I'm not gonna name no names. I'm not a person of tattletale. You feel what I'm saying? But you can name some people in society, in general, in politics. Dare I even say, even in the church, just in society, period. There's people that are just domineering. The tyrants, you know, They're only thinking about themselves. How can I use you to get where I need to go? No, I want to see how we can do it together for me to get where I need to be and to bring you along with me, to bring you up another level in whatever area it is. That's the good, positive role of a king. So, let's look at some of the more of the characteristics of a king. Kings appear to be full possession of themselves. Internal conflict is not something they struggle with very often. A king really decides when he says something, and when he says he's going to do something, you best believe he's going to do it. That's just what a king is. A king is aware in parts of their very nature. They know what they can and what they can't do. They don't struggle with something saying, okay, well, I can't do this, so I ain't gonna do it. No, they do it, but they bring somebody else along who has the power and authority in that area to make things happen. That's just wisdom. Excuse me. So there's no self-doubting in the decisions that they make. Once they make those decisions, they follow through with it. Either prosper or fail, they follow through with it. That's just what a king does. They're not what the Bible calls, or what I say with the Bible, but you know me, you know what I like to call it. But some people, they might be kind of iffy on what I call it, but I like to call it the King's Survival Scroll. What it says in the King's Survival Scroll, it says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. If you always have to think and second guess everything, you shouldn't even do it in the first place. Once you make up your mind as a king to do something, just do it. We used to say that a man's word was his bond back in the day. And it still reigns true today. What you speak as a king should be binding to yourself. When you speak it, you agree upon it, do it. It don't matter. But I digress. We're going to keep rolling on just what a king is. Now we have 5 other kings and what types of kings, but we're just talking about a king, period. Kings are naturally dominant in life, therefore not having a submissive role. They don't really like having a submissive role. But if it's to accomplish a goal, accomplish something that they know will be the good for others, they would kind of like shrink back a little bit and allow that person or those people to dominate in that area. But he's looking with eyes of vision and knowing it's going to help the common good of everybody else. Throughout life, kings would tend to assume leadership positions and responsibilities with little effect on their part. Nevertheless, they are not always in actual positions of power. Did you catch that? Not necessarily in positions of power. Like other kings will experience life through every possible angle. This is important for the sake of balance. They can be beggars as well as I wanted to say something else, but I'm gonna keep it PG. They can be beggars or even presidents. So don't look at a person, don't look at a man and say he ain't a king. You don't know what experiences or what knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and insight he has to share with you. That's influence. Influence is power. Not necessarily a position, but influence is power. I can go to the grocery store and talk to a young man or something. Not just that, in that instance, I just had influence over him because now his mindset has changed just because of the words that I spoke out of my mouth. Don't know him from nowhere. He don't know who I am. I don't know who he is. But I wanted to share something with him. And he took it and ran with it. That's power. That's influence. Kings had that. So let's get into the first one. The first, I told you I had 5 of them. Now for the sake of time, I'm only gonna do 2 or maybe 3. Then in part 2, I do the rest of them. But like I said, there was a sage, priest, servant, artisan, and warrior. Now let's get into the sage. I like the sage. I like the sage. Now this is the definition of a sage king. Sage king is naturally entertaining and articulate. Sage kings excel in communication with both wit and wisdom. What comes to mind is King Solomon. King Solomon was wise. He was an excellent communicator. He wrote the book of Proverbs. He wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. He was just wise. Then the King Survivor Scroll says he was wiser than all kings of the earth. So I look at him as that type of a sage. You can go, you can see in the King Survivor Scroll, other kings came to him for wisdom and counsel. So let's kind of like see what inside a sage king. What was the characteristics of a sage king? Sage kings are naturally entertainers, performers, and attention seekers, actors, recounters, and storytellers. Sage kings generally have a quick wit and verbal skill. Who comes to mind when you think about people with verbal skills? People with the gift of gab. They can hold a conversation. They can hold any kind of conversation with anybody. They're not introverts. They extroverts. You know what I'm saying? They love to be around people. We'd call them the free spirits. Free spirit people. They can go anywhere and do anything. I hope not anything, but they can go to different places and not feel uncomfortable. They can get along with anybody. Sage kings have a constant urge to share their wit, wisdom with the world at large. Sometimes you can think about people who write books, write different literatures, those are type of sage kings. We'll talk about men as sage kings. People that write blogs or does vlog posts and stuff like that. Those are sage kings. Those are the characteristics of a sage king, because what they have, they want to share with everybody else. I think about what the King Survivor Scroll says: freely you have been given, freely you have received, freely you should give. Now we know all wisdom and understanding and knowledge comes from God. So therefore, what he gives you, it ain't just for you, it's for those around you who you have influence over. You feel me? Influence over. We're talking about sage kings. And then let's get into the priestly kings. Let's get into priest kings. When I think about priest kings, I think about King David. King David was a priest king. He was. And, you can find that in the King Survivor Scroll as well. You know what I'm saying? I.e. the Bible. Let's see what a priest king is. A priest king in life, priest kings seek to serve a higher good by being the source of inspiration to others. These are priest kings. These are your pastors. These are your ministers. These are your deacons. These might be your elders. They don't even necessarily have to be in a church. Ooh, did I say that? Yes, I did. Because the church is in us. You feel me? The church is in us. So let's dive in and see who is a priest king. I'm hoping that when you hear me read these off and you're starting to discover who you really are as a king in the earth. What's your realm of influence? What's your expertise in the earth? You know, unlike servant kings, well, we're going to get into that a little bit later on, probably on part 2. Priest kings are both inspired and inspiring. But whereas priest kings feel driven to move everybody on to a higher thing. They strive to inspire and arouse change by opening up and declaring their vision on a better way. You know, we can think about people doing that as a better way of doing anything. And if a priest king sees it as a better way, he's trying to inspire other people to look at it in a different way. Don't look at it in the way that you've been looking at it, but look at it in a different way. Priest kings are servants of a higher good. That is, wherever the individual priest king envisions as the highest good for all. Different priest kings will define the higher good in completely different ways, particularly as they evolve in their understanding. However, it is always the same to catapult change in others to promote a better way of being. You know, I think about the scripture that's in the King's Survivor Scroll, where it says in 1 Corinthians 17 and 28, it says, "It is in him that we move and have our being." We're talking about Yeshua, Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. It is in him that we move and we have our being. Now, if you're not in Christ, you don't know who you're being. You're just imitating what you see around you, but you're not being yourself to the core of who he has created you to be. I know I went a little bit too deep for some of y'all, but you know, sometimes we can go through life pretending to be somebody we're not. And you really haven't found out who you are until you go to the Creator and find out who he's created you to be. It is in him that we move and we have our being. See, you should already know, men, that you are kings. But now that you need to understand who you're a king for. You know, who you're a king to be. You're not a king to be just a king for yourself. You're a king to be an influence on those around you. Because kings have influence. Kings have power. That's what power is. Power is influence. I can have not a penny in my pocket. But if I have the ear to somebody who's in power, and they listen to what I say, and they listen to what I suggest, who has power? That's something to think about right there. It ain't always the people that you see in front of your TV screen. It ain't always the people that you see in politics that always has power. They can be puppets. And the people that you don't see can be the ones who really truly have the power. See, I like to plug into my source. My source is Elohim. I don't have any man. They can give me some wisdom. They can give me some insight. But wisdom, true wisdom, in the Survivor Scroll, in Proverbs, it says the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. So if you don't have the fear of the Lord, I doubt to say that you have wisdom. You might have the wisdom of the world, but you don't have true wisdom. But you know, we're going to stay on this priestly thing here. Just talking about the priestly type of kings. You know, the priestly type of king. Priests have a habit of seeing where others are going wrong and trying to put them on the right path. Having the sense of a higher calling and higher good, a better way of consistently being in part is a part of their mind. Certain life events and situations are often judged in relation to this or to them. It can be hard for some priestly kings to utter a sentence without seeming to include some sort of inspirational insight, or perhaps just a moral lecture or aptitude. They can also be taken aback to find out that others aren't immediately on board with their vision of a better way. These are priestly kings. Sometimes they can see things and it kind of frustrates them. So if you're a priestly king, don't get frustrated. They'll see it over time. As a result, they are often have a stern look in their eyes and says something like, there's much wrong with the world. Why can't you see it? Or there is absolutely a better way. Or they'll say, why aren't you making it happen? These are priestly kings, what they might say in their mind, or you might read the eyes and that's what they're saying. When they see something wrong, you see the injustice in the world, they're like, this ain't right, this ain't good, this ain't good. You know, I had to show somebody a better way. And not saying that you have all the answers, but yet and still, a king has influence. So you have influence over somebody. You don't know. It might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 100, 1,000 people. You have influence over somebody, king. So you need to know who you are. Who you are. And what you have inside you is for others to grow. So understand that priestly kings, these are what priestly kings are. We kind of touched on a little bit. Those are pastors, ministers, nonprofit CEOs, and community organizers. They're for the better good of those around them. They're not just there for themselves. They're there for those around them who they have influence over. For the good of those. All. You know? So let's touch on I got a little time. Let's touch on the servant king. Oh, I love the servant king. Because my master, Jesus Christ, he said, I didn't come to be served, I came to serve. And he's the King of kings and Lord of lords. So therefore, if he came to serve, and we're followers of him, we're followers of Yeshua, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So therefore, if he came to serve, I must serve also. In some capacity, I got to serve. This world is built on servitude. Either you're working on a job, you got your own business, or whatever. What is it if you have your own business? What is always the motto for customers? The customer is always right, because you're serving the customer. As you're serving, you're making a livelihood. As you go to that job, you're making a livelihood. So you serving. Your time is money. So you serving in some kind of capacity, some kind of way or another. You know, I can think about some other ways you serve, but you know, I'm gonna try to keep it PG or keep it I ain't gonna say I'm gonna keep it out the streets. I'll put it like that. Some of y'all call it that. You know, I can serve in other ways, but you know, we're gonna keep it PG and we're gonna keep it out the street. Alright? You hear me? Alright, let's look at servant king. Servant king. What is a servant king? A servant king embodies the energy of service, care, or helpfulness. Servant king seeks to improve the lot of individuals in a hands-on way, down-to-earth ways. They are naturally caring and careful souls who live to be a benefit to others. You know, we can look at so many people we can name. I won't even get into some of them. You know, they're just servants. You know what I'm saying? Like if you go to a restaurant, you got your waiter or your waitress. They're servants. That's what they are. They're servants. And say we talk about servant kings. So servant kings are drawn to roles in which they can attend to others' needs, not because they are less than others in any way, but because they are directly in touch with others in a common humanity. Now you can think about people that do humanitarian work or they're just in touch with other people's needs. They have empathy. That's a word I was looking for. Empathy. Because they know they're human too. So therefore, if you see a human in need, you can't, if you have any kind of servitude in you, you want to help them. Even if you can't touch them and help them yourself, you're going to either contact somebody who can help them, or you're going to send something to help them in that time of need. That's just what a servant does. You know, I remember years ago when I got saved, you know, I had a servant's heart. I had a servant's heart already. I always like to help people. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if I see them in need, I'm going to help them to the best of my abilities. And if I can't do it, I'm going to reach out to somebody else that I know has the capability, the resources to help that person. That's just who I am. I mean, you know, I don't go around and say, yeah, I help this person, I help this person. No, I ain't got to do all that. You know what I'm saying? That's why the Lord said that when you do your alms is in the book of Matthew in the King's Survival Scroll. When you do your alms, anything you do for the poor, do for somebody in need, do it in secret. To where your Father will reward you openly. God will reward you openly for the secret things you have done for the good of others. I can give you testimony after testimony of how my Father is blessed me, but I digress. You know, you have to find that out for yourself, O King. You know, so we're looking at servant kings. Well, what else is a servant king? Servant kings make up 25% of the global population. A lot of people don't know that. Servant kings. There are more servant kings than any other type. There are more servant kings than any. I wonder why that is. You know, dig that up for yourself. Find out. Servant kings tend, these are characteristics of a servant king. Servant kings tend to be sweet-natured, caring, hospitable, unassuming, and humble. Compared to the other types of kings, they can be described as mostly harmless. You know, I used to tell people that don't take my meekness for weakness now. You don't know what I had to endure to live this lifestyle. But I digress. I know some kings out there watching. It's like, boy, you talking good now. Hey man, I'm with you. On top of their good naturedness, however, they can also look as if they are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. This is because they tend to identify with the misery and suffering of others. Empathy. Back to what I was saying about empathy. However, there is also a general aura of faith in the power of good and the willingness to survive on. They tend to be very grounded and find it relatively easy to take life problems lightly. They just say, it's life. Live on. Long as you got breath in your body. My old deacon told me, boy, long as you got breath in your body, food in your stomach, and a roof over your head, you're blessed. I used to laugh at when the man told me that, but now that I'm thinking about it, all these problems that people be having, some problems they bring on themselves, some problems just come to their doorstep, but you got to choose on how you're going to move and operate around or through that problem. Press on. Live on. So that was just a little taste of the different kinds of kings. Now we're gonna be diving deep into it. Now the next one we have for part 2 is going to be the artisan king and the warrior king. Oh, I heard a lot of y'all out there talking about some warrior. You like that warrior king. You're gonna dig it. You're gonna dig it. But we just covered the sage king, the priestly king, and the servant king. Now, if I kind of went too fast on this or whatever, y'all just, hey, email, comment, whatever. Hey, you need to slow down a little bit, because sometimes I get excited about sharing some things that has been given to me. And, I'm just one to dive deep into the King Survivor Scroll when it says, "Freely I've been given, freely I should give." So therefore, when I get something, I don't try to hold it for myself. I try to give it and share it with you, King. See, I want y'all to live well, love well, rule well, and above all else, follow Jesus.